Hey, welcome to Mama Mandala. I'm Hagar. I'm so inspired to have this moment with you. We're going to have a quick conversation about inspiration as a resource right now in these difficult times because so many of us forget that we're creative because these times are difficult, because maybe we feel like our creativity is a privilege, which in a way it is, and yet creativity and inspiration can be the very threads that weave us a new paradigm, that help us create a new pathway. In a time like now, where so many of us feel like we don't even have a path, or we don't know what the hell happened to our path, inspiration can be our North Star, to look toward, to orient ourselves toward what matters to us, toward what turns us on, toward what our interests are. It doesn't have to become, see, this is the thing, in a society, in a capitalistic society, our tendency may be to think that we have to follow our passion as a career. And so many of us find ourselves brokenhearted because creative paths as careers are very difficult to pursue and to succeed in. And so we feel discouraged and disappointed. So many of us do. And in times like now, our creativity is actually crucial. For you to stay inspired is necessary for us to walk through these difficult, painful, grief-filled times, or fields of grief, if you will. That little mistake that I had on my tongue there maybe makes some sense. But to be able to follow our inspiration in one way or another, and it doesn't have to be in a creative career path, but really how we raise our children is a creative journey. How we make a meal can become the way that our inspiration is stirred in us, and how we think about putting the flavors together. And perhaps even for some of us, it goes deeper into where did my food grow? Is it organic? Sorry, I'm from California. I really can't help it. I always ask. if, Even that, like, to be able to, part of my inspiration in life in general is to have a little sense of humor around everything, and particularly to be able to have sense of humor about my own self, to be able to laugh about my own ridiculousness sometimes, or the culture that I'm very much rooted in. To be able to have some sense of humor can bring a little bit of lightness and can allow our inspiration to flow in, because we're not so stuck in the seriousness of things. And that doesn't mean we don't need to be very serious about what's going on in the world. We are facing a time where fascism is not just on the rise, it's right here. So how do we stay inspired in times like that? And I think it really helps if we turn our attention toward Greek mythology, because the word muse comes from Greek, and the muses in Greek mythology, there were 9 goddesses of inspiration, and they personified different aspects of inspiration and gave a body and a form to the way that inspiration, as history, as science, as literature, comes through to those who write or perform those pieces of knowledge and creative expression. They some of them rooted themselves in really difficult, their inspiration was rooted in difficult things, right? There is one muse that is the muse of tragedy. I find that to be very helpful to remember right now, that muse can show up wherever we are. Some of the greatest love songs ever written were written out of heartbreak, right? The greatest stories in our in our historic literature are infused with heartache, with this part of our soulfulness is anchored in grief. And so, and I'm not saying, oh, let's wallow in the mire. Let's really give ourselves fully to and surrender to how terrified we are and how enraged we may feel and how sad we are for what's going on in the world around us and how that reflects in our own personal lives. And the fact that the humanity is deteriorating and that society is main pillars right now are greed and hatred, that can be so discouraging that we forget that we are creative and that inspiration can live and breathe even within the disgust that we may feel. Right? Disgust is a flavor. If we go all the way to Indian philosophy, there are nine main flavors. The essences, the liquidity of life shows up as nine essential ways of experiencing something, and part of it is disgust. So disgust can be, instead of alchemized, affirmed. I have to be disgusted with Trump and with the Republicans right now. If I'm not disgusted by it, what the fuck? Sorry, but what the fuck is wrong with me if I'm not? If I don't have a reaction to it. So having our deep guttural reactions to what's happening, to what's going on, to where we are, to if I'm not disgusted by racism, that's an appropriate reaction. So that can be filled then with in a way with inspiration, and that can be our guide through this difficult time. And even if it doesn't mean that we're able to carve a path with and through our inspiration and our creativity, it becomes, again, the North Star. You're not always going to find your way when you find your North Star, right? Like you might still be lost in the forest for a very long time. And I'm not saying, oh, let's embrace being lost in the forest. And I'm not saying we are going to be lost in the forest forever. But for some people, it's faith. For some people, it's a kind of like a religious, what fills them with guidance in difficult times is faith, is believing in something. And even for so many of us, this idea that we have to believe in ourselves is the way through the difficulties or toward our goals. But what about the times and the moments where that's not where it's at for us? What if there's a bridge that you need to build between where you are and believing in yourself? And sure, you can argue that you need to believe in yourself in order to be able to build that bridge, but maybe maybe it can be, for some of us at least, inspiration. Oh wow, like this is so beautiful. This bridge I want to build, or this place I want to get to, or this project that I have such a strong vision of, and I want to bring it forth from inside of me into the world. And sometimes the world is not gonna receive what we're here to offer and where our inspiration has taken us. And if you need to be pissed off about that, by all means, that's again an appropriate response perhaps for you, for where you are. But inspiration is the current, it's the spark, it's the experience of being lit up by something. And if we are guided by what lights us up, by what stirs our dreams, by what excites us and moves us, then we can make some incredible pieces of art along the path and from what our life is, because our life is our art. How we live our lives is art. And, from a Joseph Campbell perspective, the mythic map that he created, the feminine was the muse. Instead of the feminine could be infused with muse. She was the muse for the hero. So that's like the hero's journey, creative map. I can leave a link for you. I wrote a couple of essays actually, one about the hero's journey and one about the heroine's journey and beyond the heroine's journey. Anyway, I will leave a few links for you in the description of the video so you can have a reference. But the feminine in fairy tales is so often interpreted as the muse itself. So the prince follows the muse into the palace, and he's awakened by her, and he's awakened by that thing that pulls him, right? I'm talking Sleeping Beauty, Aurora, and he wakes her up. But what if she's not the muse, but the muse is her erotic awakening. The muse, her curiosity got her into trouble, right? In a way, of course, there was a curse and it was predetermined, but she followed her curiosity into that room in the palace where the spindle pricked her and she fell asleep, and the whole the whole kingdom fell asleep. But what if it was inspiration, it was erotic inspiration that awakened her, that brought her back to life? She's not the muse. And I don't think he is either. I think it's the erotic creative spark that is what woke her up. So what wakes us up? What stirs our imagination? What moves us within the struggles? The way that dandelion can grow through the rubble, out of concrete, push its way through the cracks in the sidewalk, right? Like nature can be super inspiring, but I'm thinking of the way that inspiration is like the dandelion. It finds its way and it can guide growth out from and through and from within the difficulties, right? And of course, I think of Little Mermaid since I brought up fairy tales. So Sleeping Beauty is Brothers Grimm, but Little Mermaid is collected by Hans Christian Andersen, one of his collections of stories, of fairy tales. And this is, of course, a story of that was meant to warn the feminine to not follow her erotic desire, to not follow her inspiration, to not follow what pulls her out of the ocean of her unconscious and into this feeling of aliveness. Of course, it's like the story came to warn women to listen to daddy and to stay under the currents, deep in the ocean. Don't rise, don't come out, don't awaken, don't desire things. That's too dangerous, right? Of course, this story is a story rooted in Christianity. So what would be the point of a life that Little Mermaid would live if she didn't follow her heart, her passion, her procreative organs, right? What would be her life like? Is that a life worth living if we're not following the pursuit of our inspiration? It's not, I'm a little less into the pursuit of happiness. I'm a little bit more of the pursuit of inspiration. And this can be interpreted in so many ways. So of course we can say, well, sometimes you don't have the privilege to follow your passion, right? And you have to follow the route of practicality. And that's nothing to be ashamed of. Nothing is wrong with that. And the point of this conversation is not to bring us down if our lives cannot accommodate following our dreams and our passions. That's not the point. Is how do we find inspiration within a life that may be so dark and gloomy because we have to follow the practicality? How do we let ourselves be guided by inspiration within the practicality, within a life of struggle? Because inspiration can live in depression, it can live in anxiety, it can live in whatever it is that you're dealing with, and it can be a source of guidance. Again, you might not find your way out of the forest, but it will continue to guide your soulfulness, right? Your spiritedness. Muse is so important. It fills you with the power that life itself moves with, right? It's the fuel that makes you move. I'm thinking of a time in my life when my older daughter was really little and my son was just born, and it was a gorgeous time. There was so much about that time that I actually really love and honestly lately really miss. And right now in the nostalgia, there's also inspiration. There's Muse. I think there's even one of the 9 muses is the muse of nostalgia. It's interesting, but it was a time where the mundane was so hardcore. Okay, like I was really focused on just being at home with them. And honestly, they're a little older, but I haven't fully found my way out yet. And it's a source of struggle, and it's a source of an identity crisis that's been going on. And I know that a lot of mothers in our culture deal with it. So I'm openly speaking about it because I think we need to talk about it. But for so many women, there's an identity crisis that comes with raising children. And that doesn't mean that inspiration doesn't live there. It was saturated. That time for me was saturated with Muse. I wrote a whole book while cuddling my daughter to sleep and nursing my baby, my son, to sleep. And when they were asleep, when they were not asleep, I liked to keep eye contact and not be on my phone as much as I could. Sometimes I broke out of my ideals like everybody. But once they were asleep, but there was no time to move yet, because if I got up and put my baby down, he would wake up, or if I moved, my daughter would wake up. So I would lie there for a long time. And I wrote a whole book that, of course, I haven't yet published. Rooted in inspiration that came through the really suffocating mundane experiences of the day-to-day life of a stay-at-home mom. Because inspiration can live in the depth of the mundane or in the biggest experiences of awe, and in the depth of dark struggles, or in the profound excitement of feeling in love. It lives wherever we're willing to see it. And I know that Muse can be fickle, and I know that Muse can, she comes, and if you don't pay attention to her right away, she goes away, and she might not come back in a while. So many times I don't record my ideas right away, and I'm like, I'll remember it, it's such a good idea, and then I never do. So it's true. Muse can be very, you can't really pin her down, but she's there. She's there when you're willing to let her be your guide. At least for me, I don't know. Maybe for you, it's something else. And I think that may be the main point of this, is that it doesn't need to be faith. And honestly, it doesn't have to be inspiration if that's not what inspires you. But in a way, whatever it is that moves you, whatever it is that turns you on, can be seen and received as the Muse, as inspiration. And if you're into a conversation about inspiration, you want to take your creativity seriously, not necessarily as a career path, but really as a way of living, I do offer a free Substack, my free writing on Substack. I have a weekly Muse medicine that comes out on Mondays, and if you are into that, into this conversation we just had, I think you'll be into it, because every week I bring a different point for us to be inspired by and with, and there's prompts so you can activate your creative life with this work. So check it out. I will leave a link for you in the description of this video. And after this, I'm creating a little practice for us to invoke creativity and invite inspiration to become an embodied experience. So this is the video that comes next after this will be to attune and to turn and to churn and to burn with our creative fire, and how to attend to our creative inspired flame. So make sure you watch that as well. And I'm so grateful that you're here. Thank you so much. If this was interesting for you, put a like on it. If you're not subscribed to this channel, please subscribe to this channel. It helps other people find it. It helps me and my work a lot. So I really appreciate it. And thank you. I hope to see you in the next one to embody inspiration. Thanks a lot.